The Panzer II is the common name used for a family of German tanks used in World War II. The official German designation was Panzerkampfwagen II. Although the vehicle had originally been designed as a stopgap while larger, more advanced tanks were developed, it nonetheless went on to play an important role in the early years of World War II, during the Polish and French campaigns. The Panzer II was the most numerous tank in the German Panzer divisions beginning with the invasion of France. It was used in both North Africa against the British and on the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union. The Panzer II was supplemented by the Panzer III and IV by 1940–1941. Thereafter, it was used to great effect as a reconnaissance tank. By the end of 1942, it had been largely removed from front-line service and it was used for training and on secondary fronts. Production of the tank itself ceased by 1943, but its chassis remained in use as the basis of several other armored vehicles, chiefly self-propelled artillery and tank destroyers such as the Wesby and Marder II. Development. In 1934, delays in the design and production of the Panzer III and Panzer IV medium tanks were becoming apparent. Designs for a stopgap tank were solicited from Krupp, MAN, Henschel, and Daimler-Benz. The final design was based on the Panzer I, but larger, and with a turret mounting a 20 anti-tank gun. Production began in 1935, but it took another 18 months for the first combat-ready tank to be delivered. Design. Armour. The Panzer II was designed before the experience of the Spanish Civil War of 1936–39 showed that shell-proof armour was required for tanks to survive on a modern battlefield. Prior to that, armour was designed to stop machine gun fire and high-explosive shell fragments. The Panzer II B and C had 14 mm of slightly sloped homogeneous steel armour on the sides, front, and back, with 10 mm of armour on the top and bottom. Many IIC were given increased armour in the front. Starting with the D model, the front armour was increased to 30 mm. The Model F had 35 mm front armour and 20 mm side armour. This amount of armour could be penetrated by towed anti-tank weapons, such as the Soviet 45 mm and French Canon de 25 and Canon de 47. Armament. Most tank versions of the Panzer II were armed with a 2A CMKW-K30L/55 autocannon. Some later versions used the similar 2A CMKW-K38L/55. This autocannon was based on the 2 cm Flak 30 anti-aircraft gun, and was capable of firing at a rate of 600 rounds per minute from 10-round magazines. A total of 180 shells were carried. The Panzer II also had a 7.92 Maschinengewehr 34 machine gun mounted coaxially with the main gun. The 2A CM autocannon proved to be ineffective against many Allied tanks, and experiments were made towards replacing it with a 37 cannon, but nothing came of this. Prototypes were built with a 50 tank gun, but by then the Panzer II had outlived its usefulness as a tank regardless of armament. Greater success was had by replacing the standard 2 cm armor-piercing explosive ammunition with tungsten cord solid ammunition, but due to shortages of tungsten this ammunition was in chronically short supply. Mobility. All production versions of the Panzer II were fitted with a 140 PS, gasoline-fueled 6-cylinder Maybach Hill 62 TRM engine and ZF transmissions. Models A, B, and C had a top speed of 40 km/h. Models D and E had a torsion bar suspension and a better transmission, giving a top road speed of 55 km/h, but the cross-country speed was much lower than previous models, so the Model F reverted to the previous leaf spring-type suspension. All versions had a range of 200 km. Crew. The Panzer II had a crew of 3 men. The driver sat in the forward hull. The commander sat in a seat in the turret, and was responsible for aiming and firing the guns, while a loader radio operator stood on the floor of the tank under the turret. Variants, development and limited production models, Panzer II AUSF. A, not to be confused with the later AUSF. A, the AUSF. A was the first version of the Panzer II to be built, and was subdivided into 3 sub-variants. The AUSF A/1 was initially built with a cast idler wheel with rubber tire, but this was replaced after 10 production examples with a welded part. The AUSF A/2 improved engine access issues. The AUSF A/3 included improved suspension and engine cooling. In general, the specifications for the AUSF A models were similar, and a total of 75 were produced from May 1936 to February 1937 by Daimler-Benz and MAN. The AUSF A was considered the 1 series under the LUS 100 name. Panzer II AUSF B, again, not to be confused with the later AUSF B. The AUSF B was a second limited production series embodying further developments, primarily a heavy reworking of suspension components resulting in a wider track and a longer hull. Length was increased to 4.76 meters but width and height were unchanged. Additionally, a Maybach Hill 62TR engine was used with new drivetrain components to match. Deck armor for the superstructure and turret roof was increased to 10 Euro 12 RM. Total weight increased to 7.9 tons. 25 were built by Daimler-Benz and MAN in February and March 1937. Panzer II AUSF C. As the last of the developmental limited production series of Panzer IIs, the AUSF C came very close to matching the mass production configuration, with a major change to the suspension with the replacement of the 6 small road wheels with 5 larger independently sprung road wheels and an additional return roller bringing that total to 4. The tracks were further modified and the fenders widened. Total length was increased to 4.81 meters and width to 2.22 m, while height was still about 1.99 m. At least 25 of this model were produced from March through July 1937. Main production models, Panzer II AUSF A, B and C, the first true production model, the AUSF A, included an Armour upgrade to 14.5 mm/0.57086614 inches on all sides, as well as a 14.5 mm floor plate, and an improved transmission. It entered production in July 1937 and was superseded by the AUSF B in December 1937, introducing only minimal changes. Few minor changes were made in the AUSF C version, which became the standard production model from June 1938 through April 1940. A total of 1,113 examples of AUSF C, A, B, and C tanks were built from March 1937 through April 1940 by Alcott, FAMO, Daimler-Benz, Henschel, MAN, MIAG, and Wegmann. These models were almost identical and were used in service interchangeably. This was the most widespread tank version of the Panzer II and performed the majority of the tank service in the Panzer units during the war. Earlier versions of AUSF C have rounded hull front, but many vehicles of AUSF C were up-armored to fight in France. These have extra armors bolted on the turret front and superstructure front. Also, up-armored versions have angled front hull like that of AUSF. Some were also retrofitted with commander's cupolas. Panzer II AUSF D&E, with a completely new torsion bar suspension with 4 road wheels, the AUSF D was developed as a cavalry tank for use in the pursuit and reconnaissance roles. Only the turret was the same as the AUSF C model, with a new hull and superstructure design and the use of a Maybach Hill 62TRM engine driving a 7-gear transmission. The design was shorter but wider and taller than the AUSF C. Speed was increased to 55 km/h. A total of 143 AUSF D and AUSF E tanks were built from May 1938 through August 1939 by MAN, and they served in Poland. They were withdrawn in March 1940 for conversion to other types after proving to have poor off-road performance. The AUSF E improved some small items of the suspension, but was otherwise similar and served alongside the AUSF D. Panzer II AUSF F continuing the conventional design of the AUSF. C. The AUSF F was designed as a reconnaissance tank and served in the same role as the earlier models. The superstructure front was made from a single piece of armor plate with a redesigned visor. Also, a dummy visor was placed next to it to reduce the number of anti-tank rifle bullets hitting the real visor. The hull was redesigned with a flat 35mm plate on its front, and the armor of the superstructure and turret were built up to 30mm on the front with 15mm to the sides and rear. There was some minor alteration of the suspension and a new commander's cupola as well. Weight was increased to 9.5 tons. 524 were built from March 1941 to December 1942 as the final major tank version of the Panzer II series. Panzer II, based on the same suspension as the AUSF. D and AUSF E-tank versions. The FLAM used a new turret mounting a single MG-34 machine gun, and two remotely controlled flamethrowers mounted in small turrets at each front corner of the vehicle. Each flamethrower could cover the front 180-degree arc, while the turret traversed 360-degree. The flamethrowers were supplied with 320 liters of fuel and 4 tanks of compressed nitrogen. The nitrogen tanks were built into armored boxes along each side of the superstructure. Armor was 30mm to the front and 14.5mm to the side and rear, although the turret was increased to 20mm at the sides and rear. Total weight was 12 tons and dimensions were increased to a length of 4.9 meters and width of 2.4 m, although it was a bit shorter at 1.85 m tall. A PzKpfw II radio was carried. Two sub-variants existed, the AUSF A and AUSF B, which differed only in minor suspension components. 155 FLAM vehicles were built from January 1940 through March 1942. These were mostly on new chassis, but 43 were converted from Panzer II AUSF. DE. The Panzer II was deployed in the USSR, but was not very successful due to its limited armor, and survivors were soon withdrawn for conversion to Marder II tank destroyers in December 1941. Panzer II AUSF L looks. A light reconnaissance tank, the AUSF L was the only Panzer II design with the Scharch-to-Laufwerk overlapping interleaved road wheels and slack track configuration to enter series production, with 100 being built from September 1943 to January 1944 in addition to the conversion of the 4 AUSF M tanks. Originally given the experimental designation PzKpfw it was adopted under the alternate name Panzerkampfwagen II and given the popular name Lux. The Lux was larger than the AUSF G in most dimensions. It was equipped with a 6-speed transmission, and could reach a speed of 60 km/h with a range of 290 km. The PzK-12 and PzK-SPR radios were installed, while 330 rounds of 20mm and 2,250 rounds of 7.92mm ammunition were carried. Total vehicle weight was 11.8 tons. Self-propelled guns on Panzer II chassis, 15 ACM SIG-33 off PzK Panzerkampfwagen II. One of the first gun mount variants of the Panzer II design was to emplace a 15 cm SIG-33 heavy infantry gun on a turretless Panzer II chassis. The prototype utilized an AUSF B tank chassis, but it was quickly realized that it was not sufficient for the mounting. A new, longer chassis incorporating an extra road wheel was designed and built, named the PzK Panzerkampfwagen II. An open-top 15mm thick armored superstructure sufficient against small arms and shrapnel was provided around the gun. This was not high enough to give full protection for the crew while manning the gun, although they were still covered directly to the front by the tall gun shield. Only 12 were built in November and December 1941. These served with the 707th and 708th Heavy Infantry Gun Companies in North Africa until their destruction in 1943. 7.62 was CM Pak 36, R, off PzK Panzerkampfwagen II AUSF. DE, after a lack of success with conventional and flame tank variants on the AUSF DE chassis, it was decided to use the remaining chassis to mount captured Soviet anti-tank guns. The hull and suspension was unmodified from the earlier models, but the superstructure was built up to provide a large fighting compartment on top of which was mounted a Soviet 76.2 mm anti-tank gun, which, while not turreted, did have significant traverse. Only developed as an interim solution, the vehicle was clearly too tall and poorly protected, but had a powerful weapon and was better than what the Germans had at the time. 7.5 ACM Pak 40 Offiziell Panzerkampfwagen II. While the 7.62 ACM Pak 36 was a good stopgap measure, the 7.5 ACM Pak 40 mounted on the tank chassis of the AUSF resulted in a better overall fighting machine. New production amounted to 576 examples from June 1942 to June 1943, as well as the conversion of 75 tanks after new production had stopped. The work was done by Daimler-Benz, FAMO, and MAN. A much improved superstructure for the 7.62 ACM mounting was built, giving a lower profile. The Marder II became a key piece of equipment and served with the Germans on all fronts through the end of the war. 5 ACM Pak 38 Offiziell Panzerkampfwagen II, conceived along the same lines as the Marder II, the 5 ACM Pak 38 was an expedient solution to mount the 50 anti-tank gun on the Panzer II chassis. However, the much greater effectiveness of the 75 anti-tank gun made this option less desirable, and it is not known how many field modifications were made to this effect. Leaked Feldhaubitze 18 Offiziell Panzerkampfwagen II. After the development of the Offiziell Panzerkampfwagen II for mounting the SIG-33, Alcott designed a version mounting a 10.5 ACM Leaked Feldhaubitze 18/2 field howitzer in a built-up superstructure. The Panzer II proved an efficient chassis for this weapon, and it became the only widely produced self-propelled 105 howitzer for Germany. Between February 1943 and June 1944, 676 were built by FAMO, and it served with German forces on all major fronts. Munitions Selbstfahrerfett Offiziell Panzerkampfwagen II. To support the Westby operation, a number of Westby chassis were completed without installation of the howitzer, instead functioning as ammunition carriers. They carried 90 rounds of 105 caliber. 159 were produced alongside the Westby. These could be converted by installation of the LeFH-18 in the field if needed. Limited production, experiments and prototypes. Panzerkampfwagen II mit Schwimmkörperparagraph PER, one of Germany's first attempts at developing an amphibious tank. The Schwimmkörperparagraph PER was a device built by GEBR Sachsenberg that consisted of two large pontoons, with one attached to each side of a Panzer II tank. The tanks were specially sealed, and some modification to the engine exhaust and cooling was needed. The pontoons were detachable. The modified tanks were issued to the 18th Panzer Regiment, which was formed in 1940. However, with cancellation of Operation Sea Lion, the plan to invade England, the tanks were used in the conventional manner by the regiment on the Eastern Front. Panzer II AUSF G. The fourth and final suspension configuration used for the Panzer II tanks was the 5 overlapping roadwheel configuration termed Scharch-to-Laufwerk by the Germans. This was used as the basis for the redesign of the Panzer II into a reconnaissance tank with high speed and good off-road performance. The AUSF G was the first Panzer II to use this configuration, and was developed with the experimental designation VK901. There is no record of the AUSF G being issued to combat units, and only 12 full vehicles were built from April 1941 to February 1942 by MAN. The turrets were subsequently issued for use in fortifications. Specifications: crew, 3, engine, Maybach Hill 66P driving a 5-speed transmission, weight, 10.5 tons, dimensions, length 4.24 meters. Width 2.38 m. Height 2.05 m, performance, speed 50 km/h. Range 200 km, main armament, 7.92 x 94 mm G141 automatic rifle. turret mounted with PzKpfw sight, secondary armament, 7.92 mm G34 machine gun, coaxially mounted, turret, 360° hand traverse, armor, 30 mm front, 15 mm sides and rear, Panzer II AUSF. H. Given experimental designation VK903, the AUSF. H was intended as the production model of the AUSF. G. With armor for the sides and rear increased to 20 mm and a new 4-speed transmission similar to that of the PzKpfw 38, T, nanoampere. Only prototypes were ever completed by the time of cancellation in September 1942. Bra 1 Autocannon of Panzerkampfwagen II, after failed attempts to use a Panzer I as a chassis for a bridge layer, work moved to the Panzer II, led by Magirus. It is not known how many of these conversions were made, but 4 were known to have been in service with the 7th Panzer Division in May 1940. Panzer II AUSF. J. Continued development of the reconnaissance tank concept led to the much up-armored AUSF. J, which used the same concept as the PzKpfw IF of the same period, under the experimental designation VK1601. Heavier armor was added, bringing protection up to 80 mm on the front and 50 mm to the sides and rear, with 25 on roof and floor plates, increasing total weight to 18 tons. Equipped with the same Maybach Hill 45P as the PzKpfw IF, top speed was reduced to 31 km/h. Primary armament was the 2 cm KWK-38L/55 gun. 22 were produced by MAN between April and December 1942, and 7 were issued to the 12th Panzer Division on the Eastern Front. Panzerwagen of Panzerkampfwagen II AUSF. J, a single example of an AUSF. J with a jib in place of its turret was found operating as an armored recovery vehicle. There is no record of an official program for this vehicle. Panzer II AUSF. M, using the same chassis as the AUSF. H, the AUSF. M replaced the turret with a larger, open-top turret containing a 5 cm KWK-39/1 gun. 4 were built by MAN in August 1942, but did not see service. Panzerkampfwagen II Unaufbau, one used for obsolete Panzer II tanks that had their turrets removed for use in fortifications, was as utility carriers. A number of chassis not used for conversion to self-propelled guns were instead handed over to the engineers for use as personnel and equipment carriers. Panzer Selbstfahrerfett 1C, developed in prototype form only, this was one of 3 abortive attempts to use a Panzer II chassis for mounting a 5 cm Pak 38 gun, this time on the chassis of the AUSF. G. 2 examples were produced which had similar weight to the tank version, and both were put in front-line service, but production was not undertaken as priority was given to heavier armed models. VK1602 Leopard. The VK1602 was intended as a 5 cm KWK-39 armed replacement for the AUSF. L, with a Maybach Hill 157P engine driving an 8-speed transmission. While the hull was based on that of the PzKpfw IIJ, it was redesigned after the PzKpfw V Panther, most noticeably with the introduction of fully sloped frontal armor. 2 versions were initially planned, a lighter, faster 18-ton variant and a slower, 26-ton vehicle. The former was abandoned at an early stage. Subsequently, work on the first prototype was abandoned when it was determined that the vehicle was underarmed for its weight, and versions of the Panzer IV and V could serve just as well in the reconnaissance role while being more capable of defending themselves. This vehicle never received an official Panzerkampfwagen title, but it would have been called the Leopard had it entered production. Its turret design was adopted for the PzKpfw 234/2 armored car. Users: a Nazi Germany, a Kingdom of Bulgaria, Slovak Republic, and Norway. See also: List of World War II military vehicles of Germany, comparison of early World War II tanks, list of armored fighting vehicles of World War II, notes. References Peter Chamberlain and Hilary L. Doyle. Encyclopedia of German Tanks of World War II. Arms and Armour. ISBN 1-85409-214-6. Thomas L. Gentz. Tank Combat in North Africa, The Opening Rounds. Schiffer Military History. ISBN 0-7643-0226-4. Germany's Panzerkampfwagen II, PzKpfw 121 inches. World War II vehicles. Retrieved February 3, 2004, PzKpfw II. Achtung Panzer. Retrieved February 3, 2004, PzKpfw II. Panzer World. Retrieved April 19, 2005, Panzer II. Achtung Panzer. Retrieved December 23, 2010, VK1602 Leopard. Achtung Panzer. Retrieved December 23, 2010, German Light Panzers 1932-42 by Brian Perrott, Terry Hadler. Osprey Publishing, 1998. Panzer Tracts No. 2-3 Panzerkampfwagen II A USFD, E, and F by Thomas L. Gentz, Hilary Louis Doyle. Panzer Tracts, 2010, Belgrade Military Museum, external links, AFV database, Panzer II types, pictures of Panzer II at battletanks.com, Panzer Euro Panzer II at the Canada War Museum, surviving Panzer II tanks a PDF file presenting the Panzer II tanks still existing in the world.